So let's very quickly move on to the next presenter. Rik is my favorite presenter. He's at one time had to dress up so that nobody would recognize him again. So many times he's been on our meetups. Rik Van Bruggen from Neotechnology.
I have a fan. All right. Yes. Cool. So, my name is Rik. I work for Neotechnology, and I am all about graph databases. We've got a little booth outside, and I want to ask everyone here, are any Bruce Springsteen fans? Can't start a fire. Can't start a fire without a spark. Right? Can't start a fire without a spark. I want to give you guys a spark. I want to give you guys a spark. Start looking at your data in a different way. Start looking at your data in the form of a network. Everyone's been talking about it today. You know, the first presentation this morning, the Louvain algorithm that was presented this morning, it was all about networks and analyzing networks. There's so many more insights to be had if you start looking at your data in a different way. It doesn't have to be size. That is the most determining factor of data being interesting. I'm telling you, there's very small data sets out there that are superbly interesting. And to be honest, if I were a goldfish, I'd rather be the small one in this case. So when we're talking about graphs, when we're talking about graph databases, we're not talking about charts, right? So wake up. We're not talking about charts, we're talking about networks. We're talking about how you and what you can do with networks. Right? We've all been schooled, we've all been drilled, right, to think that every nail, you know, everything we see out there is a nail, and that all we can do is hammer it, right? But there's so many other things that we can do with it, and you really should be stopping to look at tables, right? Don't look at tables anymore. There's enough tables out there. You should look at graphs. Right? Graphs are wonderful. Graphs are spectacular. Once you start thinking in graphs, they're everywhere. Right? This is my favorite character in the world, Leonard Euler. Right? I hated him in university, right? But he is wonderful. He invented graph theory, and graph theory can revolutionize the way you look at data. Graph databases are an application of graph theory. They take a look at databases in a completely different way. Stop looking at tables, but essentially make the relationships, make the links between your data elements first-class citizens. Right? So that you can really start looking at the data as a network, start exploiting the relationships between the data elements as a network, start doing those deep join operations, start inventing and discovering the links between your data elements just by traversing the network, by traversing the graph. Lots of big companies have been built on this. Right? In case you didn't know, Google is all about networks. Right? PageRank, right? LinkedIn, it's all about networks. Twitter, it's all about networks. But lots of people have been using this. And something like Neo4j, like a graph database that I actually sell, so if anyone wants to order them, right? Okay. They have some wonderful use cases out there, right? Things like recommendation engines, things like fraud detection, things like impact analysis tools. I actually prefer to use them to find new beers, right? If anyone's ever seen me talk about that, I've got a wonderful data set about Belgian beers that's really small, but that has taught me a lot about new beers, right? Which you can actually see. Right? So I've used it to find new beers that I didn't know existed. Right? Beers that are interesting, beers that I like, beers that have the same taste and similar taste to things that I love. But you can also use it for normal day operations, things like the innovation survey that Philippe facilitated. Right? Yeah, you can look at that as a graph as well, and I've been tweeting about it today. Some really interesting statistics come out of that by looking at data as a graph. If you want to do that, if you want to participate in that journey, right, I just want to invite you to our meetup, right? We have a meetup on graph databases as well here in Belgium. We meet about every month, and there's a new event happening end of April, and you're kindly invited to that. It's at a brewery, by the way. If you want to have some more fun, then there's a wonderful conference happening in London, early May, which is Graph Connect. Right? It's a wonderful conference. About 400 graphistas will be there, and there's a lot of interesting talks. And I just invite you not to be a lonely document, but to talk to me about it, and I hope to see you later on at the stand.
Excellent.